The desert wind carried whispers of sand across the abandoned mining colony on Kepler 442b. William Chen wiped the sweat from his brow, his weathered hands gripping the geological scanner as he documented yet another empty vein. At 43, he had spent half his life on this forsaken rock, chasing minerals that barely paid for his supply shipments. That's when he heard it, a sound so faint he almost mistook it for the wind through the canyon walls. A whimper, a cry that seemed to vibrate with frequencies both above and below human hearing. William followed the sound to a crevice between two massive boulders. There, nestled in a hollow that still radiated residual heat from the binary suns, lay something impossible. The creature was no larger than a house cat, its translucent scales shimmering with colors that seemed to exist outside the normal spectrum. Membranous wings, torn and tattered, trembled with each labored breath. Its eyes, massive and multifaceted like living galaxies, fixed on William with an intelligence that made his heart skip. "What are you?" William whispered, kneeling beside the dying creature. The being's scales were fatting, losing their luminescence like stars winking out one by one. William had been alone on Kepler 442b for 7 years, ever since the mining company abandoned the operation. He knew death when he saw it. This creature, whatever it was, had hours at most. He didn't think, he acted. William scooped the fragile form into his arms, careful not to damage the delicate wings further, and ran back to his habitat module. His mind raced through possibilities: alien biology, unknown pathogens, first contact protocols he'd never been trained for. None of it mattered. Something was dying, and he refused to let that happen without a fight. In his cramped medical bay, William worked with the desperation of a man who had forgotten what it meant to care for another living thing. He administered oxygen, adjusted the temperature, offered water mixed with glucose. The creature's breathing steadied just slightly. Its eyes never left his face. "You need a name," William said softly, checking the improvised IV he'd rigged. "Maya, I'll call you Maya." For 3 days and nights, William didn't sleep. He researched, experimented, failed, and tried again. He discovered Maya responded to certain electromagnetic frequencies. He modified his habitat systems to generate them. He noticed her scales brightened near his hydroponics bay and moved her there, surrounding her with earth plants he'd grown from seeds, a connection to a home he barely remembered. On the 4th day, Maya lifted her head and made a sound like crystal bells singing. Her scales blazed with renewed light, and when she unfurled her wings, they cast rainbow shadows across the walls. William laughed, a sound rusty from disuse, and Maya tilted her head, mimicking the expression in her own alien way. The months that followed transformed William's lonely existence. Maya grew, though not in the way he expected. She remained small, perhaps the size of a medium dog, but her presence filled the entire habitat. She learned to understand his speech, responding with melodic trills and chromatic displays across her scales. She would curl up beside him while he read, her warmth a comfort against the cold desert nights. She played with the repair drones, taught herself to operate the door controls, and once accidentally activated the emergency beacon, an incident that gave William a heart attack until he realized no one was monitoring it anyway. But it was the connection that surprised William most. Sometimes when Maya rested her head against his chest, he could feel something, not quite thoughts but impressions. Gratitude, affection, and something deeper, something that felt like belonging. "You're stuck with me now," William told her one evening, watching twin sunsets paint the sky in impossible colors. Maya chirped and wrapped her tail around his wrist, scales pulsing with gentle warmth. For 7 years they lived together. William taught Maya about humanity, showed her music, movies, books from Earth's library. She taught him things he had no words for: how to sense the magnetic fields of the planet, how to hear the song of distant stars, how to find beauty in absolute solitude. Then, on a day like any other, everything changed. William was repairing a solar panel when Maya suddenly went rigid. Her scales blazed brilliant white, and she released a sound William had never heard before, a resonant call that seemed to shake the very fabric of space. The sky answered. First one ship appeared, then another, then dozens, then hundreds. They materialized out of faster-than-light transit, vessels of impossible design that made human engineering look like children's toys. They ranged from small fighters to massive carriers, each one adorned with scales that matched Maya's coloring. The fleet surrounded Kepler 442b in a perfect sphere, blotting out the stars. William's communication array, silent for years, erupted with signals in a language that his translator couldn't begin to parse. But then Maya was there, touching her nose to the console, and suddenly the words made sense. "We seek the savior of the lost heir," a voice resonated through every speaker in his habitat. "We seek the one called William Chen." Lost heir. The words echoed in William's mind as he looked at Maya, who gazed back at him with those galaxy eyes, unafraid. A single ship descended, landing with impossible grace near his habitat. The airlock opened, and beings emerged, creatures like Maya but larger, their scales armor-plated, their presence radiating power and ancient dignity. At their head walked one whose scales shifted through colors William associated with autumn on Earth, golds and crimsons and deep purples. The being approached, and William stood frozen, suddenly aware of his patched jumpsuit, his worn boots, his sun-damaged skin. "I am Sovereign Crethix of the Draconic Concordat," the being spoke, and its voice carried the weight of millennia. 12 of your years ago, our diplomatic vessel was attacked by void pirates in this sector. In the chaos, an escape pod was jettisoned containing the most precious treasure of our entire civilization, Crown Princess Maya Thronar, heir to 3 star systems and keeper of the genetic legacy of our species. William's legs felt weak. Princess. He looked at Maya, who chirped innocently and nudged his hand with her head. Crethix continued, its massive form bowing low. "We searched for years. We mourned. We prepared for succession wars that would tear our civilization apart. And then, 2 days ago, we detected her life signature, strong, healthy, and bonded." "Bonded," William managed to croak. "Our people bond only once in our lifetimes," Crethix explained, rising. "It is a soul-deep connection that transcends species, language, even time itself. Princess Maya has bonded with you, William Chen. By the ancient laws of our Concordat, you are now recognized as royal consort, guardian of the air and bridge between species." The world tilted. William grabbed his habitat's wall for support. I just fed her, kept her warm, I didn't." "You saved her when she was dying," Crethix said, and now its voice held something that sounded like reverence. "You asked for nothing in return, expected no reward. You gave comfort to a being you didn't understand in a place where no one would have known if you'd simply let nature take its course. Such compassion is rare in this galaxy, William Chen, rarer than any treasure." Maya moved to William's side, pressing against his leg. He reached down automatically, fingers finding the spot behind her crest that she loved to have scratched. "We have come to honor you," Crethix declared, "and to ask if you would accompany the princess home, to take your place among our people as one of the highest-ranked members of our society." William looked at his habitat, his home for 14 years. He thought of Earth, a planet he'd left as an optimistic young man seeking fortune in the stars. He thought of the loneliness, the years of isolation, the slow acceptance that he'd likely die here, unmourned and forgotten. Then he looked at Maya, whose scales pulsed with colors he'd learned to read. Hope, love, a question. "What about my work here?" William asked, surprised by his own question. Crethix made a sound like laughter. "The mineral rights to this entire system are now yours, as befits your station, though I suspect the princess would prefer if you spent your time elsewhere." Maya chirped emphatically, making everyone present laugh, a strange harmony of human and draconic joy. William knelt, bringing himself eye level with Maya. In her gaze, he saw reflections of late nights watching her learn to fly, of the time she'd gotten tangled in his Christmas lights, of 1,000 small moments that had built something he'd never dared name. Family. Okay, William said softly, then louder. Okay, let's go home. Maya's scales exploded with light so brilliant that William had to shield his eyes. When his vision cleared, she had changed, grown larger, her form more regal, more powerful. But her eyes remained the same, and she still tucked her head under his hand in the exact same way. Some things, William realized, transcended species, status, or circumstance. As he boarded the flagship with Maya at his side and an entire fleet in formation around them, William Chen understood that he hadn't saved a dragon that day in the desert. She had saved him. And together, they would bridge two civilizations, proving that compassion needed no translation, and that the smallest acts of kindness could echo across the stars themselves, returning magnified beyond imagination. The desert wind on Kepler 442 whispered through the empty habitat one last time, carrying with it the beginning of a legend that would be told for generations, of a lonely miner and a dying hatchling, and the bond that changed the galaxy forever.